Well, good morning, everyone. I'm going to wait a few seconds whilst the attendees spool into this webinar. So we'll get going in about 20 seconds or so. Okay, good morning. My name's Tom Jenkins. You can only hear my voice at the moment. I'm just got a screen up at the moment to point out that this webinar, which is a public webinar, it's being recorded for future reference, is being sponsored by Destinations Exchange Europe, which is the ETOA meeting for destinations and suppliers to meet with those tour operators who are devising product and itineraries in 25 and 26. And that's going to be taking place on the 8th and 9th of April in London. More information is available on the ETOA website. I would urge everyone to look at that. Okay, we're now in the flesh, so to speak. Good morning. I'm just going to invite my two distinguished panelists here, Gerhard and Martin, to introduce each other. Martin, why don't you start off?
Hi, nice to meet you. Good morning, everybody. Martin Sapori from Accor. I'm actually in charge of sales for Europe and Northern Africa, managing a playground of 44 countries and covering all the different segments, including, of course, the leisure, as we're discussing today. And I'm particularly in charge of strategy, transformation, and business development for all of those countries for the group.
Thank you. And Serhat.
Yes, my name is Serhat Götz, and I'm based in Frankfurt, responsible for the leisure part within Central Europe. That means some of, let's say, Central Europe countries like the German-speaking countries, and next to those German-speaking countries are involved as well. So in total, I'm responsible for 9 countries. Especially if it comes, as just Martin said, about a leisure strategy moving forward from a global perspective as well.
Thank you. I ought to mention at the start that both Serhat and Martin have beautiful corporate backgrounds. Mine appears, in contrast, like a bombed second-hand bookshop, but maybe you wish to read into that what you wish. And now, gentlemen, let's get going. Oh, by the way, everyone in the audience, please put questions in the Q&A area. We've got two very distinguished people here, and it would be great to have feedback from the audience and questions posed by the audience. So please feed them in. It would be very good to have them because it helps me compare the event apart from anything else. Now, we arrive at this discussion after, I think, 4 of the most traumatic years ever experienced by the hospitality industry, certainly in my lifetime, and indeed in virtually everybody's lifetime. We've never seen anything like it. And I'd be very interested to hear first from Serhat, actually, and then from Martin, how their hotel chains really coped with the dramatic drop in demand that we saw in 2021 and 22, and how the recovery has been. I mean, it's thrown up all kinds of challenges that we weren't anticipating. But so I'd be very interested to hear your take on that.
Thank you for the question. Yes, I mean, for all of us, it was really a difficult time, and when we all stepped into the pandemic phase, we were all like, okay, what can we do now? Because everything was banned, and of course, on the tour operator side as well, there was confusion as well. And what we tried to do in the beginning was really to keep on having the contact as being available, to talk about those let's say new situations, and how we could move forward together, to make it a bit easier from our point of view, of course, and what can we do for you as a client as well, to be ready when we have to be ready. So we did different kind of activities. So this kind of, let's say, webinars, or we did also a so-called expo where we invited clients and hotels, to have, online conversations to help each other. So that helped in the end of the day to revamp the business again. So we were connected all the time, and as the moment arrived, that we then could be in the programs as well. Our hotels were ready, and the tour operators even as well. Yeah, I mean the business came back a bit quicker than we thought from an European point of view. So next to our countries, we have seen even then a bit later movements as well. In terms of long-haul destinations, or let's say sources, it is still a bit struggling, but it is moving, and we see now an impact as well.
That's interesting. And it's interesting what you said about how the recovery, certainly from intra-European traffic, from our members' point of view, from intra-European traffic, and particularly from North America, the reasons of which we might explore in a minute. We had this debate when the crisis started as to what the recovery would look like, and nobody knew whether it was going to be a gradual thing like the dawn, or a sudden thing like the sun coming out from behind a cloud at midday. And the answer is that certainly for North America, it was a sudden thing like the cloud suddenly coming out from behind the cloud at midday. Suddenly, we were back not quite to 2019 levels, but very rapidly approaching that point. Martin, is that your perception? I mean, what happened with you?
Well, thank you for the question as well, and I think it's also a pleasure, and always a pleasure to exchange and discuss with you, and of course with our clients. Of course, back to the beginning of your question. Of course, it was tough years also for us in the last 3-4 years in time, but just focusing ourselves on the positive side is that last year, and actually we also just published our financial performance of last year. Really this morning, we landed to 5 billion euro revenue worldwide, with a record in the EBITDA, which is overpassing the 1 billion for the 2023. And this is really, historically speaking, the best result for Accor ever. So if the question is that the recovery is there, yeah, the recovery is there. And as mentioned by Sarat, is actually something that it was most accelerated last year, especially in the second half or from Easter time than expected. So no one can predict the beginning of the last year the way that the recovery has been done. Everyone will say the recovery is going to be there, but sometimes for some countries or for some segment, it was really, really more accelerated than expected, which is, I think it's a very good point. If we compare the situation, the picture today versus the situation before pandemic, of course, there are some gap and some differences. And, as usual, I would focus on 3-4 main axes. The first one is the segment. The recovery as it is today in terms of performance is not, globally, it's very positive, but with some difference compared to the segments when it comes to the business travel, to the leisure travel, and to the MICE. So it's not exactly in the same way as it was before the pandemic, and this is something we need to respect. Also, taking into account that the leisure part was really driving the performance in 2022, especially in the individual one versus the group one, while for the 2023 results, even the last quarter last year, the group performance was very, 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 very good. And also when it comes to brands, we are actually covering a portfolio of more than 45 brands from economy to luxury, which is absolutely a very full context picture that we can get, because again, the recovery was not in the same pace for all the brands and all the spending when it comes to economy business, mid-scale properties, or luxury lifestyle. But of course, it's also a difference by country, because long haul that you were mentioning, like for the US, US was even more accelerated than expected, even in 2022. And even in 2023, the performance is very strong. For the Asian point of sales, of course, we're still with a situation which is not the same pace of 2019. Of course, it's recovering, it's accelerating, but this is the way that we can see also in the 2024 that this is going to continue throughout the rest of the year. And the last point about the flows, if you say the flows between long haul and Europe example, we are talking about especially about Europe here, and most probably even in Europe, we have different situation between some market like France, Germany, Spain, Italy, and UK, or Eastern Europe as well, which were really progressing smoothly, but again, not at the same speed.
Wow, yeah, there's a lot of information there. I think, and how fascinating. I think, from our point of view, I think you're quite right. What has been striking has been the different performance of the different markets, undoubtedly. I think what happened in North America, it was partly driven by the issuing of toll credits. I think what we forget, we're going to be looking forward in a second, guys, but just looking back in order to look forward. But the thing that happened, what we forget is that 2020 was going to be a world record year. We were going to have more clients coming into Europe than ever before. And this was partially being led by North America, which was looking very, very strong. And so what happened was that we went from having a record, looking at the prospects of a record year, into complete zero territory. How that manifested itself in terms of customer relationships is that the tour operators were allowed to issue tour credits. They said, "We're not going to give you a refund. We'll give you a voucher that you can cash in for your for this vacation when you're able to do so." I believe in Europe, and I believe in the Far East. There were certainly in Japan, they were entitled to full refunds and received them. Now, what that meant with North America is that when people could come back, there were all the reasons why there were every reason why people jumped on the opportunity. Firstly, they hadn't been able to escape for 2 to 3 years. They had 2 to 3 years worth of savings, hypothecated to going on vacation, and a huge proportion of them had tour credits that could be cashed in immediately, and they did. And that meant, I think that very much drove this huge surge in demand that we've got from North America. What the prospects of the Chinese and the Japanese markets coming back, I think, is an infinitely interesting subject, which should be the topic of another webinar. But I think the question I'd like to point to you on this is, how do you think? There are two questions about the Asian market, really. Firstly, they require accommodation, fixed rate accommodation, a long time in advance. These people need to produce brochures, and they're still producing brochures, and they need to do them almost 18 to 24 months in advance. It's probably got the longest lead time in terms of contracting. Is that something you're able to accommodate? Fixed rates, 24 months in advance? And do you think that the market is going to be resilient to look at 24, 25 prices in the same way as they were looking at 29 prices? Because the pricing is very different nowadays. Again, I think I'll start with Martin just to change it, and then I'll go on to you, Serhat, in a minute. So, Martin, there's two questions. Fixed rates, I suppose we could just keep, which is not a small matter, I know, but it's a big issue for the Asian market. And the second question really is, do you think this market is going to be, resilient to the price rises that we're inevitably seeing at the moment?
That's a very fair question, Tom, and I would like to point out a couple of comments here. The first one about the capacity from the hotels to contract many years or 2-3 years in advance. This used to be the historical path. This is something that is quite common for the hotels as well. What changed in the last 2-3 years is that the dynamic model pricing has really accelerated. Why this has been accelerated? For many reasons. For the hotels, the need is to try to get a look on the forecast of the rooms which are going to be allocated. And this was quite stable in terms of process before the pandemic. But as we look back the last 2-3 years, it was just literally impossible for an hotel, which is an investor, which needs to make money at the end of the day. But in 2021, it's still 2022, it was very hard for everyone, including all of us, to make some predictions. And when you have some uncertainty on the stability on the predictions, it's quite complicated to take some decision very strong in advance. That's why in the last 2-3 years, the dynamic model was really helping the hotels, and actually not only the hotels, the full travel industry, to make it happen and to follow up on this. So the answer is yes, but we need also to consider that the context we're living here, not only on the leash, but more in general, it's quite different from the one we were coming from. But there's still some possibility, to retake some discussion on it. And of course, I'm sure hotels are open to discuss any single point on it. Why? Because for the hotels in Europe, it's not only important to get flows in business from intra-Europe and domestic, but it's also super important to get attractivity on the local market as well. And there's a lot of debates on the US, but for me, Asia, like China and India, which you didn't mention, but I think is still on the game, and Japan as well. There are markets which is producing in 3 countries 40% of the global population with a strong acceleration of the economy. So there is, of course, some kind of opportunity on those markets as well. And the second question about the prices. Again, yes, price baseline, it's quite different from some years ago. That's super true. But also the cost baseline is quite different from 2-3 years ago. If you consider the inflation point, the increase in the cost of energy, the increase in the cost of gas, the non-capacity or very difficulty to find the staff in the full travel industry completed by the accommodation as well. These are all components which are playing a role when it's about the pricing. But of course, price is something which we need to consider in a very smart way and flexible way to make sure that the demand that hotels are making to the clients, all the clients, and I would say for the longer clients as well, where we are demanded to predict business and volumes in 2-3 years' time, is to make sure we are committing on the volumes, we're committing on the potentials. So materialization rate should be an option to discuss in advance, because if we're able with our clients as well to predict in a fair way the materialization with all the complexity which needs to be considered, of course, but in a mutual job on understanding, there's also some flexibility to open conversation. But if the question is, there is an interest on the local market on the Asian point of sales, the answer is absolutely yes.
Okay, and I please, I don't think, I don't want you to think, I don't want anybody to think that we don't think people should make money. It's quite important that you charge the right price. And I'm not questioning
Absolutely.
your
The
costs
right
have gone
point,
up. I was
absolutely.
more intrigued as to the fact that, and we've yet actually to see it, as to what the demand is like in Asia when they've been out of the picture now for 4 years or 5 years, and they're used to prices that were prevalent in 2019, and they now see the prices prevalent in 2024, and there is a substantial difference.
Yeah.
And there may be sticker shock. I'm not saying there aren't very good reasons for those prices. I think I'm actually going to go over to Zahat rather than continue this conversation. I want to hear Zahat's take on this because I've got a question I need to ask. Zahat, please.
Thank you, Martin, that you pointed it really very in detail out. There are similarities to us as well. So maybe I point out some bits and pieces out of it, how it was within our group. What we observed actually was that all these other, let's say, emerging Asian markets came on the table, right? I mean, this is what we discovered. For example, I have a great example from Austria, where a hotel in Vienna used to have Chinese groups over and over, right? As that business was almost 100% down. They tried, of course, to figure out if there's something else out of the Asian market, and even he was a bit. The hotelier was a bit fed up in terms of the handling and, of course, the consumer as well in the property, and they wanted to have a bit more um, clients which are reliable, where they know what to expect, and then they observed that the Korean market is a great market to look at, and the hotel is now totally on Korean clients, and he just told me even they created new ideas in terms of the breakfast, in terms of F&B in general, right? Because they are so thankful about what the hotel is doing, and this is for me a great example how movements could look like, right? I mean, the thing is really a lot of things for the hotels change, and the part in terms of deciding rates 2 or even 3 years in advance. This will not happen anymore in this kind of how it was in the past. They, of course, look into business models where they can, even connect with clients, having dynamic production. It is easier to control. It is easier, to move around with that business. And this is what we tried, to make happen. That we look into those. Clients that we just find solutions to connect them, and then to create yes a case where we have a dynamic production, and you have a very big company in Asia with C-Trip. C-Trip is a perfect example how the movements look like, right? I mean, the hotels like having clients which is clear, which is reliable on a long haul point of view, and that's the reason why there are a lot of movements around it, and you see it as you just mentioned, the US market as well. I mean, here a lot of businesses really moving into those dynamic environment.
And what you're saying, so you said that you felt that it's going to be very, very difficult, or they're not going to issue contracts which are 18 months in advance, because they're moving very much more towards a dynamic thing, and they're looking for the best available rate at point of closure. I'm intrigued by that. I mean, surely for some hotels, it makes sense for them to fill up a proportion of their space a long time in advance. For many, not. But I mean, for a lot of people, it's quite important business for them, isn't it? I mean, they're going to continue doing that, or do you think they're going to be they're going to stop offering this? I'm intrigued. I've got,
I think it is a kind of combination, right? I mean, hotels understood, to look a bit deeper into their business portion of leisure, MICE, and corporate, right? And as long as corporate and MICE was down, they and this is always that was actually the problem in the past. Everybody was focused on business and MICE. They are very clear on those segments. Leisure was always a kind of mystery thing, right? And then it came into the focus, and they tried to understand what kind of subsegments we have within the leisure segment, and now they understand wholesale, tour operating, OTAs, and everything, and how to move around the needle if they want to. And that's the reason why I just underline this dynamic business case, because it is easy, right? And that's actually what they look at. But on the other hand, you're right. I mean, these let's say static contracts will never go away, because in particular hotels, it is very needed. It is a basis of business they want to have, and it depends to the property itself. I mean, if it is a big box, I mean, of course, they need this kind of business in the future as well. If it is a small hotel, 50 rooms or something, I mean, they play around it.
It's difficult for hotels below 50 rooms to accommodate groups at all. And
Yeah.
I'm actually thinking in terms of group tours where when it comes to FITs, things become very difficult. And it's difficult because there are luxury or small specialist operators that do FIT, still do FIT, and do it almost offline. I mean, they're putting it together for individuals.
But don't get me wrong. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, I mean, this business is crucial for the hotels in general. Absolutely, right. And if it comes to the luxury piece, it's even different, because again, as you just said, that could be another webinar to talk about it, because especially the luxury space is very difficult to look at. If you look into the Middle East, business from Middle East into Europe, I mean, it is still very strong, but it is very traditional.
Yeah.
Can I just react on this point?
Yes, by all means,
I
Martin,
think
please.
it's quite an interesting one. First of all, I think that there should be, or there must be, a lot of respect for the work which has been done by the leisure operators worldwide, because this is to get a business case and predict in advance volumes, prices, and negotiation skills. This is absolutely a kind of knowledge which should be really respected. What was happening in the last 2 years is that when you got an hotel in the middle of nowhere or with 350 rooms, which is not the 50 room we're talking about, this hotel was most probably segmenting in a different way when it comes to the midweek dates and the weekend dates, okay? My point is that there should not be one strategy which fits all needs, based on the countries, on the segment, on the segmentation, on the location of the hotels. Again, the rules is always location, location, location. This never changes, you know. So that's basically one point to discuss and to say the strategy should be adapted by the hotel based on what is the story of the hotel, but what is the opportunity of the hotels. And this is where I'm strongly convinced there's still some space to discuss. What was happening is that some hotels was obliged to replace historical business. Hotels which were giving 20 years in a row of leisure group business from China, from Japan, and from Asia in general, and suddenly this business was not there for 3 years in a row. So they were obliged to keep the hotel open at the end of the day. That's why, you know, part of the business should be considered to replace this business. The complicated story about the leisure operator, which are coming back now on the field from Asia, is that they were not in the same position like they were 3-4 years ago. And this is where some discussions should be made, but again, in a partnership way, as usual. And looking also in the chat, I'm perfectly aware that not all the hotels are acting in the same way. Not all the hotels are even respecting the basic rule of the market. I was looking that there's one hotel in the UK and Ireland that signed a contract FIT and they didn't respect the price which was signed. This is just awful, and this is just not possible. And this is something that we need to come down in terms of industry on, you know, not taking the chance even to discuss these kind of things. If the contract has been signed, the contract should be respected 100%. No way to discuss on it. But, you know, I understand that sometimes there's also the revenue management role and the yielding staff, which is coming in the hotels in the last 5 to 10 years. And sometimes a sales position should maybe different from the yield position. That's why relationship with clients from the hotels is absolutely key. And we are discussing it from an hotel chain perspective. This is really where the focus on the centralized hotel chain should be go. But again, I think there is a lot of opportunities from those point of sales, The only point is that maybe the way to address this opportunity is not exactly the same as it was before. That's why I'm insisting on the point that the more we are mature in the discussion, the more we are mature even in respecting what has been signed, which is something that I don't accept in any case, but it's something that it's still an opportunity, is going to remain an opportunity. And just one example, which is, because you mentioned the luxury example, which is a solid one, you know, some luxury hotels still have static rates, most probably offline. But let's consider resorts in an island in Europe or somewhere. Those resorts, because of the business model, will continue to have static rates, because maybe it's a seasonal hotel and this is not going to dramatically change. In the playground, we need to respect the fact that there are also other players from the market, which is basically OTA, like Ctrip in Asia, and some other ones, which is playing in the same field of the operator. The good strategy from a hotel is to keep the relationship with everyone, but of course, to sign deals, so to continue to sign partnership with those point of sales, which for me are going to be the new playground in the next 2-3 years. 2023 was the year where European infra Euro flows was coming back. While 2022, it was more US point of sales and domestic. I'm quite convinced that 24 and 25 will be here where we are going to see comeback from Asian flows, from Australia, from very long haul point of sales, which were more focused on domestic or continental travels, and now they are more open to come back to Europe, and also because Europe is a good place to travel at the end of the day.
Wow. So do you want to react to that?
Yeah, I mean, it is very important, you know, to differentiate, you know, the focus what we have as an regional or you know, an overall point of view compared to a property point of view. Properties you know, used to act sometimes not even reasonable, and as just Martin just said, to respect contracts. I mean, that is one thing. And especially within the leisure arena, it is such an important thing that you respect contracts. Of course, other segments as well, but within the whole chain, if you look into when you sign a contract and the business you know, arrives, sometimes we have 2 or 3 years in between, and it is important to respect that. And even sometimes you know, the client help the hotel, of course, in the kind of, and if you do not respect that business later on because you don't need it from an hotel point of view, that is not the way how we work and how we act. But in the end of the day, our hotels, for example, you know, they act on themselves because they are independent. We are a corporation, not a typical chain. So, of course, we have to respect, you know, the point of view of the hotel as well. So we are always a bit in between. We see what is going on the client side as well on the hotel side. So we try, you know, to balance actually yeah, the business moving forward. And in the end of the day, yeah, it depends to the product itself. If it is a resort, static rates will never disappear. If you look into a city property, which is maybe within, you know, a very corporate driven area, it's again a different story. In the end of the day, our main purpose is really to make you know, to be within that let's say playground of the client and the hotel, to make sure that this is a reasonable business to look at, and then to be a partner both sides, and that's actually what we try to do.
Gosh, I think it's I think what we're looking at is a whole series of new the current word is used challenge rather than problem, so I'll stick with challenge. Sounds better, but it's quite clear that in some ways the distribution mechanisms in some origin markets need to catch up with the reality of product supply and destination. By which I mean, if you look at Japan, if you look at even North America, I mean, the planning cycle that we've got is set by the customer. This is not set by the operator, or it's set by our intermediary customers, which tend to be travel agents still, or the marketing drives that people click in with when they make a decision as to where they're going to go on vacation next year. And it's for these long haul markets, going on vacation is a big decision. It's not we'll take a Eurostar, or we're gonna take a short haul flight and go on a city break. It's a major investment of time and money to do so. And conventionally, we are looking at a product planning cycle of about 18 to 24 months. And we all three of us know this. And it's very difficult for us to change that. It's extremely tough. And I'm wondering, how this might occur. I'm not saying that you've got an answer to this, but I suppose my question to you is, what do you want tour operators to do for you? What you've got intermediaries, which are, can have live feeds into your booking systems, and they can put dynamic pricing and circulate that dynamic pricing on your behalf. And the negotiation is no longer really around price. It's more about commission and distribution and page position. It's really the tour operators who are adding value in a different way, insofar as in broad terms, they're looking after the clients and putting it together and putting itineraries together. What do you want them to do? How do you want them to present themselves, given that this is what their customers want? I mean, do you think it's almost going to be a shift away from that business model? Is that the way the market's going? We're not going to have people organizing 18-day tours on buses. And by the way, I think buses are probably the coaches are probably the future of travel, because they're by far the most sustainable and least congesting way of moving people around. But that's a separate matter. What do you want them to do? I'll start with Martin, because we just heard from you, Serhat. Martin, what's your perfect tour operator? Not one that walks in and says, "I'll pay whatever you demand," but I mean, where do you see them adding value, and how do you see that? How can they best work with you, I suppose?
Tom, I think that again, globally speaking, if you look at the numbers of last year globally as a market in Europe, the assumption is that this is a record year for everyone, but there's still some space in the occupancy rate. Okay, so back to one of the questions here, the record last year were coming from price, but also from volumes, especially for Europe, versus the previous years. So this was really the base of the performance of last year for everyone. But there's still some occupancy rate which we need to recover from some countries and some destinations, globally speaking. So where we discuss with hotels, with the owners, with with our internal stakeholders, especially in Europe, they love to have longer flows. The point is that when you have a situation where they replace some of the segment with some other ones, they need to consider that they cannot be back on how it was before, because it's going to create a problem in their business performance more globally. And that's where I think tour operators could really play a very, very good game. For me, a tour operator is a professional partner with having totally the ownership of the relationship of the client, the final client, the organization, and the promotion of the hotel, of the brand, or on the destination as well. This is all a job which tour operators are doing. And they're not paid for that. So the tour operator in Asia, they're not paid to promote, I don't know, Milan or Venice or Madrid or Paris. But at the end of the day, in principle, they're promoting the destination. This is something that should be duly respected by the hotels. And this is duly respected by many of them, I would say. So for me, a perfect tour operator is a client who is presenting to the hotels as a partner in crime in promoting the hotels, the brand, and the destination first. Second, who is able, as much as he can, to embrace the technology changes, because there's a technology who change it. And I know that sometimes this could be hard because it's impacting an historical business model, which is there from many years. I'm playing this field in 20 years in a row. So I remember even before the OTA which came in. So I know it can be hard, but there should be some space of discussion on it because technology is still there for all the segments and not only for the leisure. And it's super important to get efficiency at the hotel level. And the third key point is that partnership is something that should be discussed, should be signed, and contract should be respected. I'm sorry, but I was quite shocked about what I was looking in the chat. For me, this is not in discussion.
Martin, Martin, don't be shocked.
No. Me personally, I'm not sure because it's not existing. I know it's existing, but for me personally, it's something that should not exist. Let's say I'm still living in the ideal world.
I'm almost tempted to say you ought to get out more, but that's neither here nor there. Keep going, please.
No. Just the last point is that as soon as the partnership is in, there should be a very fair discussion about, for the hotels, what is important is get business in the moment of the year where they are in need, which is most probably where the Asian flow point to say it's going to help. It should be a good business for the hotels and good business for the operator, but it should be also able to commit on some conversion. Because for the hotels, the historical problem sometimes from the Asian flows was, and I'm not talking about now, I'm talking about many years ago, was we signed for a certain number of rooms, which we keep on hold until the very last time. And then if the materialization rate is very low, the hotel is supposed to resell those part of inventory. And sometimes it's good because they may be getting prices which is higher. Sometimes this is just not possible, okay? So maybe release could be one of the conditions to discuss in a fair way because it could help hotels to predict where it's coming actually in the hotels. And if there's some maturity in this kind of discussion, I'm sure this can help in the relationship with the tour operators.
And I think what you're raising is some very interesting points here, which maybe are specific to each market, because the statutory requirements in India, for example, and in China are very different from those in Japan. And Japan, as we know, with a 28-day cancellation ability, causes absolute mayhem for all the intermediaries because they never know what is happening until 4 weeks out. But that's changing the Japanese consumer law on that front is a task we engaged in about 10 years ago, and we still haven't seen much progress on that. But we're getting there, I dare say. Zaha, do you have an ideal model of a tour operator behavior?
I mean, I think we always look for an ideal world, but there are a lot of truths within those points what Martin just pointed out, and I think bottom line, it is really the thing that we know tour operators, do a great job in terms of promoting their products. I mean, that is a totally different thing compared to those OTAs or those others who are, let's say, are seen as a channel, not more. That's what it is. A tour operator is, of course, really on the products, and from a hotel point of view, it's a great opportunity to promote their product. As just Martin said, for them, it is all about the destination, and the hotel runs with it, which is good for the property itself. What I like to see more is the point what we mentioned already, this kind of dynamic behavior. And Martin, thank you that you just pointed out in terms of talking about release, talking about allotments moving around. I mean, of course, you signed a contract, but it's not signed, or let's say uh, set in stone or something, right? I mean, we can talk about it while we are running actually within the process. So it could move around. Maybe the tour operator is selling phenomenal. They need more rooms. Of course, we talk about it. I mean, that's always the thing what tour operators do. But on the other way around, there's always a bit kind of silence. And even if the hotel is asking for rooms to get back in terms of allotments, or even if they want to change releases, it is a kind of, I know that's what we signed, right? I mean, we have to stick on these rules, and that's what I want to see, tour operators to be more flexible in the end of the day, because everybody honors what they do, and I have a lot of hotels which are keen on this piece of business within the leisure space, because they know that their product is really well promoted. And even in terms of marketing opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities for an hotel, running together promotions, being on road shows together, or even doing together sales calls at the point of sales with travel agents. So there is much more from an hotel point of view to do to get that rolling. But again, I think that is my message, to be more flexible in terms of what we signed.
Mm-hmm. I wonder. I mean, there is a very good reason to come up with this conclusion, which is it is the right conclusion, but it's a very old conclusion that what we need is communication and flexibility on both sides. And I'm wondering whether there are new issues bubbling up underneath. I noticed someone's posed a question saying that we are saying that tour operators should embrace technology. Is this a reference to dynamic model pricing, or is there anything else that they should be embracing? I don't know if you want to respond to that, Martin, while I formulate the conclusion on this discussion. Should they be embracing any other technology?
I think that technology is, if I'm, my career was starting a tour operator, just to be clear. So I know that, and this is still in my heart, so this is where I start my career in the travel industry many years ago, fortunately. So, but technology is absolutely, for me, one key element. And I give an example, which is not necessarily to put distribution platform, which is part of what we're talking about. But as we were saying before, that for hotels, but also for a tour operator, it's very tough to predict what's coming in 2-3 years' time. Technology can help. Technology can really help to get the data, not only the historical one, but even different trends. And there is a way to use the technology to give good prediction, even if it's tough. But this is what all the travel industries are doing, and even other industry, to use the technology to be more consistent in predicting the future, which is not only the short-term future, but it's also the medium-term future, which we are talking about. With a good grade of calibration on it, I think tour operator can use technology to predict more, and which means also to commit a little bit more than it is today and get. But I'm also insisting on the fact that the tour operator should be positioned by an hotel as promoting the brand and promoting the hotel. This is the strong difference versus the channel. Here we don't have a channel. We have a client is a partner more than a client, and the partner is promoting the hotel, and this should be visible. But technology, back to your question, should really help the capacity for the tour operator to predict the data. Imagine a tour operator which is building package, and not only on the hotel side, but also on planes and transportation. They need to be able to plan, to take some commitment, and not only in the hotels, it's more in general. So for me, technology should help.
It is really important to look at technology, like Martin just pointed out. It is not about the distribution piece, right? It is a whole architecture what we are looking at. So, for example, tour operators are out there. They created systems where travel agents could package very dynamically, right? I mean, because it is changing. I mean, everything is getting more focused on very specific needs. They are looking at, I don't know, something very cultural. So there is not really a ready package out there, but the travel agent, they need, of course, tools, to make that product happen for their clients, right? So I think it is about that. I mean, because tour operators used to have a massive product environment, in terms of, it's not only hotels or transportation. It is about a lot of things, activities and everything, right? I mean, and then in the end of the day, the whole package gets bits and pieces, and this is something which is, I think, the future. To have systems which are helping each other to create actually those, let's say, tailor-made products, which are more booked from a consumer point of view. Think about the new generations coming up. I mean, they are all looking into those products from a mobile point of view, right? And if you just could put the bits and pieces on yourself together, because the tour operator is very addicted on technology. I mean, guess what will happen? That tour operator will be chosen because of the fact they are offering actually that kind of solution.
Well, look, if I were a tour operator, I'm looking at the questions that are flowing in the questionnaires, as indeed we all are, and I would, I think what I would turn around to you and say is, look, we don't just sell hotels. We are Hotels are a means to an end, which is delivering a vacation, and people very rarely buy vacations. That there are exceptions to this rule, but they very barely buy vacations on the basis of the hotel or the basis of the hotel brand. Particularly in long haul markets. I mean, someone could turn around to me and say, "Look, you're staying in the Hankyu Hanshin Hotel in Tokyo," and I really would not know what they were referring to, and it would not steer my purchase decision. Alas, clients buy on content, destination, and price. And in that mixed, if you want these people to do this selling, as the dialogue is showing here, they need some kind of fixed pricing. It's different if you're dealing with a client who is just choosing where to go, has chosen where to go, and is then picking the hotels themselves. A dynamic model works perfectly well, and they can use the OTA.
Tom, don't get us wrong. It is not about to move away from fixed rates.
Yeah.
That is very clear. Of course, for this kind of product or environment, you need fixed rates. Don't get me wrong. It is about the technology behind it. That should be dynamic, or let's say, as a consumer point of view, or as a travel agent point of view, they need kind of this kind of dynamic system that where they can make sure that they meet actually the needs of the consumer.
Can I just say one single line on it, because I think it's super important that we distinguish wholesaler versus tour operator. The general switch dynamic used to be so much important in the wholesaler, where the main topic for the hotels was to have distributed from this wholesaler, package rate or FIT rates into the web, competing with the direct side. This was the reason which was at the source of the switch to dynamic, but this is for the wholesaler. But due respect on the model for the package to operator, where of course, like in the corporate business, it's the same. Even companies, they need to get fixed price for the employees, and this is still existing. There's still some dynamic which is growing, but it's still so much static, the corporate business. It's the same need. I'm talking from an hotel point of view. But of course, there should be some technology which we use to predict more in advance, because the difference here is that we need to predict in 2 years' time. And the last year, it was very important and very complicated. Now we need to make sure we're using technology to predict in the right way. But then it's going to be tour operator, very, very much different from the wholesaler space. And when you hear about dynamic switch, it's all about wholesaler actually, where they were producing some problem on the website of the hotels, while for the tour operator, it's another business. You're combining different services and not only the hotels. And this is something that we should take into account, or maybe also you should take more, on the spot when the clients are discussing with hotels as well.
Gentlemen, what can I say? Not only that, but you've got a whole dialogue sprouting in the questions area in the last 5 minutes of 5 minutes of our time. I think we're going to have to do this again. I think we're throwing up all sorts of interesting issues. I've not gone on to the fact that how tour operators and hotels can work together when we know there is weak demand. It's a huge issue, of course, how we get into hotels when the hotels, frankly, don't need the help of any intermediary because they can sell themselves quite happily. But how do we react and how can we respond to areas of weak demand, particularly in low season, when we know that the place is going to be comparatively empty? How can tour operators help hotels shift what is essentially highly perishable stock? You cannot sell yesterday's hotel room. It's gone. It's gone more assuredly than a dead strawberry has gone. It's history. So there should be tremendous energy in trying to find ways of filling space. And the market, to a certain extent, and we know the market, particularly last-minute markets such as the Israeli market traditionally, has been very, very good at responding to these situations. But there must be new ways of doing so. So I think there are, thirdly, we learn from our customers. What have we learned from catering to Chinese visitors? We know what we learned from catering to Japanese visitors. We know what we've learned from catering to American visitors. What will we learn from the other Asian markets that are coming on stream now? There is so much to discuss, and we haven't been able to. We've just scratched the surface. But I'm very, very grateful to Zerhat and to Martin, who've given up an hour of their very busy lives to take part in this webinar. I'm very grateful to the people who posed questions. I hope we've answered the questions rather than explicitly addressing them by reading them out. But I think we've covered most of the issues that you've raised. We will rerun this again, undoubtedly. And thank you very much, everyone who's taken part. The last call I will have is, please, ladies and gentlemen, have a look at Destinations Europe. It's the ETOA event where suppliers and tour operators talk about planning future products. So have a long. It's in person. It's in London. It's in April. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.